likely a mechanic, and who wore a name tag with the initial E. As the years passed on and forensic technology advanced, they were once again working on this cold case. They ran the latent fingerprints through Avis and did a DNA test on some of the evidence. They found that the fingerprint and the DNA test was a match for a man by the name of Edward Grant. Now, Edward Grant also frequently purchased paint for his family business, and Grant was indeed a mechanic at the time of Penny's murder. Now, it would be in May of 2002 that Edward Grant would be found guilty and convicted for murdering Penny. It took quite a few years, but the clues and the information that psychic Mary Downey gave the police had been accurate and spot on. So, that's another case. Sadly, though, I will tell you, Mary Downey passed away in 2011. She was a radio talk show host and a paranormal investigator and a pretty gifted psychic. She had appeared on numerous television networks, including Court TV. Mary had joined in discussions of other hauntings that she had been involved with too. And that's truly, truly very interesting. Now, I'm going to talk about a few cases that were solved with the help of psychic Dorothy Allison. She was known as the psychic detective. A little bit about Dorothy before we begin with some of these fascinating cases. Dorothy, of course, was a self-proclaimed psychic, and she was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey. She first discovered she was psychic when she was 14 years old. She had predicted her own father's death. And, mind you, her father was perfectly healthy, had no issues. But, as she stated, 4 weeks later, her father passed away. He had caught pneumonia and died of some complications. She was consulted on several cases by law enforcement, and she had written some books and appeared on TV shows, and she also appeared on Unsolved Mysteries. And here's something quite crazy. She even predicted her own death, saying she wouldn't live to be 75 years old and that she would die shortly before her 75th birthday. Well, in fact, she did pass away December 1st, 1999, of heart failure. And it was just 4 weeks before her 71st birthday. Her first case was back in 1967. It was December 3rd, and there was this little boy, and he was playing with his brother alongside a riverbank when he disappeared. Well, Dorothy had a vision 2 hours before the incident happened that a little boy was drowning and he got caught in a pipe. Dorothy later contacted the police, who were very skeptical about the stuff she was saying and about what she was describing. But they listened, and she started to describe the visions of the little boy down to what he was wearing. Some of the clues that she gave were the correct description of his clothing. She said his hands were clasped together and that his shoes were on the wrong feet. She also stated that he would be found behind a school. Dorothy even predicted that the boy would be found on February 7th. And indeed, all of these clues were correct, and he was indeed found on February 7th. So quite fascinating. She got the premonition prior to the event. And that does happen with psychics also. The police then contacted Dorothy again in December 1974, and the case involved a man who got on a train to travel, and we're going to go to a short break, and we'll talk more about this case when we come back. So, with that, we'll be right back after this short break, folks. You are listening to Ghost Talk on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio with me as your host, Shelly Robertson. If you just tuned in, I invite you all to join me in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can ask me any questions you may have. Now, I've been talking about crime cases that have been solved with the help from psychics, and if you missed the first part of the show, no worries. You can catch the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Now, we were talking about, prior to this break, about some of the cases from a psychic by the name of Mary Downey, and I was just starting to get into a case that she was contacted about in December 1974. And this case involved a man who got on a train to travel, and no one seen him get off the train. He just simply disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. So, a couple of months before the man's body was found, Dorothy Allison had given police several clues. Now, the clues she gave them, they were that she told the police that the guy fell off the train and he drowned in some water. She said a bow and arrow was significant, and the number 222 was significant as well. She also stated that a row of tires was significant and that there was a little park where kids slide downhill. And she said she saw the man in the water there. Okay. So when the man's body was found, it was determined that he did fall off the train and drowned in the river. And there was a park nearby. And that park had a row of tires that someone arranged to make a sled run. And here's the crazy, crazy, crazy part. His body was found February 22nd by a father and a teenage son who were out bow and arrow target shooting on a bluff just over the river when one of their arrows missed the target and it landed several feet from the dead man's body at the base of the riverbank. Now, tell me, is that absolutely astounding? So everything she talked about was in the real crime scene. Now, Dorothy Allison, she was also consulted on the Son of Sam case, which, that was a serial killer. And she very accurately drew a portrait of the killer, David Berkowitz, and it looked a lot like him, actually. She also stated that the killer would be caught due to a traffic ticket. And that was actually correct. Dorothy Allison was also consulted on the very high-profile John Benet Ramsey case, and she helped find missing people, and she helped on quite a few cases. Just astounding. I wish they would have actually solved the John Benet Ramsey case, really. I still follow that one. This next case, it takes us to Pennsylvania, and Nancy Meyer, who was a world-famous psychic detective, and she has appeared on Unsolved Mysteries, Psychic Detectives, Psychic Investigators, and FBI Psychics in Japan. And, I would like to see that show. Nancy is also a published award-winning author. She has worked with authorities around the country for over 2 decades. And of the 300 criminal cases that Nancy has worked on, she's given vital information to help solve 80% of them. And I think that is a fantastic track record. Now, Nancy's first major case was in Wilmington, Delaware in 1977 when Detective Leroy Landon asked her to help track down an unknown serial rapist, okay? The police were first, skeptical like they all are about Nancy. So what they done, they gave her a few clues about the rapes to test her skill. Now, when they took her to the home of the first victim, Nancy was able to improve on the victim's own sketch of the suspect. The victim told the detectives that it was indeed more accurate, okay? And when they were leaving, the victim grabbed Nancy's hand, and all of a sudden, Nancy saw the entire rape taking place, and she also saw the face of the rapist. After that, she saw the rapist sleeping and noticed that he was wearing a faded work uniform, okay? Now, after the meeting, Nancy went into a trance-like state and she ran down the street. And this happened every time she left that victim's house. Nancy always seemed to end up at the same street corner, but she couldn't give the detectives a house number. Finally, Nancy went to the spot where the rape had happened, and she instinctively focused on the telephone.